On Saturday, November 16, we revisited the Goldfields Railway in Waihi yet again. This is technically my local heritage railway, even though it's still an hour's drive north of my city. In any case, this is a restored section of the original East Coast Main Trunk, which closed in 1978 after being replaced by the Kaimai Tunnel deviation. The present-day Goldfields Railway runs for around 6.5 kilometres from Waihi to Waikino. On this occasion, Goldfields had 3 round trips scheduled, and we got lucky with the motive power because DBR 1282 was brought out to haul the first 2 services on her own, with 1199 not appearing until later in the day. These 2 DBRs are owned by DBM Contracting instead of the Goldfields Railway Society themselves, and they arrived at Waihi in November 2022. Meanwhile, the other surviving DBRs that are not based at Glenbrook or Goldfields are still owned by DBM Contracting, as far as I know. From what I gather, 1226 and 1267 are still in Wellington, but as for 1200 and 1213, they were transferred to Taumaru Nui, of all places, on the 24th of October. As it stands now, I don't know what else is going to happen to these locomotives. Upon arrival at Waihi Station, we saw Baguli Drury 040 number 3652 sitting outside the shed and coupled to the coaches. I initially thought the Baguli would be the day's motive power, but the DBR's owner soon told me otherwise. 3652 was only fired up to arrange the coaches. There were lots of people already waiting at the station for the 9:45 service, and some of them even brought their bikes, which were loaded onto UG79. Meanwhile, 3652 was uncoupled from the train and returned to the shed, but for whatever reason, she went all the way down to the Maddox Street crossing before reversing back up the loop line. I went along to the crossing to film 1282's departure, which ended up being around 15 minutes late. Unlike on the Auckland suburban network, a delay as long as 15 minutes is not too big of an issue on the Goldfields Railway, since it only ever has one train running on it at a time. After paying $20 for the adult return ticket, I decided to catch the 11:30 service, which was the second run of the day for DBR 1282. There were a decent number of passengers on this trip too, but not enough for a full load, and I had a whole coach to myself. The coach I rode in was A1288, built at Newmarket Workshops in 1913, and this thing is notable for being the railway's wheelchair coach. Those whacking great big doors on one side were retrofitted in preservation. It only needs to be on one side because both platforms are on the same side of the track. And the ramp is placed between the coach floor and the platform. As one of the volunteers on board the train told me, if people in a wheelchair want to ride the train, they have to let the railway know in advance so that they know to attach A1288 to the consist. The trip from Waihi to Waikino takes around 30 minutes to complete, with the railway line running through some picturesque scenery and, in a few places, right alongside State Highway 2. This is the only heritage railway in New Zealand to have a bridge going over a state highway. Upon arrival at Waikino, I noticed that the station building has been repainted in the time since I was last here, and that 2 little platforms have been built past the normal one. I dare say they make it easier for people to get off the train when it has more coaches than what can fit in the platform, which happens to be rather short. DBR 1282 promptly ran around to the other end of the train, after which her prime mover was shut down. The 11:30 ex-Waihi service has a long layover at Waikino to allow for a lunch break, and the return service to Waihi doesn't leave until 1 p.m. 1282 wasn't fired up again until just a few minutes before departure. DBR 1199 was brought out for the last of the day's regular services, which left Waihi at 1:45 PM. Apparently, there was a birthday charter later in the afternoon, but I went home before that run. In any case, 1199 appeared to be towed dead behind 1282. It's interesting to note that 1282 has never been repainted since her rebuild from DB 1015 in the early 1980s, and one wonders if she'll ever get a full overhaul. As for 1199, she is in a slightly better condition, and retains the Max Blue livery she received during a refurbishment in 2003. I like this livery because it reminds me of the days when I saw, and rode behind, the DC locomotives on Auckland suburban services. Incidentally, while I did see DBRs 1199, 1226 and 1254 during their days in Auckland, that was only while they were parked at Westfield Yard, and I never saw them running any passenger services. 1226 is now owned by DBM Contracting, but, as I said earlier in the video, still stored in Wellington, while 1254 is famously part of the Glenbrook Vintage Railways fleet, and has been a semi-regular sight on mainline excursions for the better part of 5 years now. Thinking back to the Goldfields DBRs, I'll end this video with the footage I shot of them double-heading on the 145X Waihi and 230X Waikino services.